Bienvenidos, señores y señores, to the Bleed Lows Podcast. This episode of the Bleed Lows Podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. Basketball is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. And as your continued source for all your sports wagering information, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, and giveaways all season long. It's always the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports and events, whether that's the NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, or even golf. So head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE, B-L-E-A-V, to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts. And joining us on the carne asada is Dodgers pitcher Andre Jackson. Andre, ¿cómo estás, amigo?
Hey, todo bien, todo bien.
Look at that. So where did you pick up? Did you pick up that Spanish from your days in Arizona, or did you pick it up from the locker room?
I think it all started in Arizona. I always had teammates from Mexico growing up. So, like, I learned a little bit of the Mexican Spanish and the slang. And then, but I definitely am using it a lot in the locker room more than life now. So
did they teach you all the bad words like everyone always does?
Yeah, for sure. I think everybody learns the bad words first, so you know what not to say, and then you got to transition to like trying to put sentences together. But yeah, I definitely struggle putting sentences together, but the understanding part kind of always help guys translate or whatever, try to understand what's going on. So.
Hey, we appreciate that, Carnal, because, you know, we're the only Latino podcast that covers the Dodgers. So you making an effort to speak of the language, I think you got a lot of fans now and just become Andre Jackson fans.
Hey, you know what's crazy? So my mom's a white girl from Massachusetts and my dad's a black dude from El Paso. So like, just I get all different cultures or whatever, but they both speak Spanish somehow.
Really?
Yeah, my dad's whole family's basically bilingual, all of his brothers and sisters, and then my mom, she picked it up in you know, growing up in high school or whatever, so they still understand it, they know what's going on still. So no one's fluent or anything, but I always had that helping me a little bit growing up too.
Hey, look at that, man. That diversity helps. Andre, looking back at 2022, like, how do you measure yourself? Like, when the season's over, do you look back and just focus on the good, or do you focus on what you need to work on? How do you, when you go back and forth between the minor leagues and the major leagues, how can you truly assess yourself?
Yeah, you know, obviously, it's one thing to look at numbers, but I think it's also something to, you know, look at how you felt during the season. And I think for me early on, I struggled obviously the first half of the season in AAA. Got called up early, wasn't throwing much up in the big leagues, and then never really caught my rhythm like I had done in 21. And so, you know, at the time I'm like, dang, you know, like what's going on? I'm walking guys. I never walk guys like that. Not throwing the ball where I want to. Off speed maybe isn't as sharp as it was, and you just look and you're like, what's going on? And, you know, for me, I had to hit a hard reset and, you know, got to work with some of our guys, minor league pitching coaches, and kind of just refresh, like revitalize and kind of like start the season over, it felt like in my mind. So, like, the second half of the season was great for me. Got the confidence back throwing the ball where I wanted to. And then, obviously, the last month ending in the big leagues, getting to throw. I called it my Sunday service. I threw every Sunday of the last month. So, yeah. So, you know, I look at the whole year. I'm like, okay, it wasn't great from start to finish, but I ended really well. And so, like, now I take that momentum, that feeling, and the things that were happening when I was throwing well, I try to take that into next season. So, you know, I can start off this season, you know, sharp and fresh, having those things, you know, fresh in my mind still.
You know, I've heard former major leaguers talk about this, but you just mentioned it, the routine. Is that just something as a fan we're never going to understand how important routine is to you guys? Because you mentioned, like, once you started throwing every Sunday service, you felt like a different pitcher.
Yeah, it is. It's very important. As a young 40-man pitcher, especially with a team like the Dodgers, I 100% feel part of the team. But it is a struggle going up and down, and everybody has to go through that. You know what I mean? So I try to rely on the veterans that have been in that situation before. Now it's to the time where it's like, okay, now I'm actually looking to establish myself in the big leagues. But it is hard. And think about like any person goes through routine in their normal day life, they just don't understand it, or aren't tapping into it like it needs to. It's gonna make them, uh, they don't understand how important it is for their profession yet. Maybe that's probably what we do is like understand that, okay, this is gonna make me do this well, which is gonna make me pitch well or make me hit well, right? So, you kind of adapt and adopt things that are like and try to streamline your life, and that's basically what the routine is. And so things that kind of sway you from that, it's like that's why you hear guys, I got away from my routine, or I got to switch my routine. It's because you really just want a couple things you can hone in on that are going to make you the best ball player possible.
Well, we got spring training coming right around the corner. And look, every time you come up, man, you deliver. I mean, you had an ERA close to 2 the first time you came up. And then last year, yeah, I get it. It wasn't that many games, but you had an ERA under 2. So we're hearing all this stuff that the Dodgers are committing to the young guys this year, right? They're not signing any big free agents and all that stuff. And I feel people are sleeping on you because you have been in the show. And not only have you been in the show, you showed that you can perform in the show. So going into spring training, how is your confidence level? Is it different this time around because you have a legitimate shot to make the team?
Yeah, 100%. I am the most confident I've ever been throwing the baseball. I feel great right now. I'm having a great off season. It's the most consistent off season I've been able to have too. So I've been able to like work on a lot of different things that I can like spend the time and focus on myself. So I can, achieve the goal. That's my goal. Go to camp and take a job. That's my goal. The thing about being with the Dodgers, and it's the greatest team in the world to play for, and it could also be the hardest team in the world to stay there too, because we are going to go sign the big free agents. But that being said, the last 2 years, the experiences that I had in the clubhouse and talking to guys is invaluable. I wouldn't trade that for anything, because the guys that we've had, the Kershaws, the Scherzers, Julio, people sleep on Julio. Julio is an ace, is a certified ace. Bueller, those guys, it's ridiculous the guys we have, right? And so when obviously it takes a little bit of track record in the big leagues to start comparing yourself to those guys, but that is the same position I'm trying to be in. So yeah, for sure. Like you definitely want to go to camp, and that is a job that I'm shooting for. But we'll see what happens.
You mentioned a key word on this show, and that's Julio. We are Julio Stans accounts here, and so when you said that you need the Spanish in the locker room, is that for Julio? Is that who you're estás charlando con Julio?
Hey, Julio's got great English, man. Julio's a stud, man. That guy, it's actually funny, man. So I think he's about to be year 6. And I'm still older than him. So, you know what? Julio's the man, and he's definitely deserves some flowers for what he's done in the last couple of years, flying under the radar. Maybe some of the big names, but he's a stud for sure.
So, you mentioned that he doesn't get enough credit. On this show, we like to say he flat out gets disrespected. And look, I get it. Sandy Alcantara, the numbers are all there.
Right.
But this guy, Julio, like the last 2 years, man, he's been out there. Not only that, but in 2020, he basically won them the World Series.
Right.
But does he always seems like a shy guy. But is it different? Like when it's just you guys out there working, is he a guy that you could talk to that can be like, hey man, when you came out here, how did you deal with this?
Yeah, no, for sure. Anybody that goes up to Julio anybody that knows him knows he's very approachable. He's a great dude. He really cares. He especially cares about the young guys, because he's still young. And as much of a veteran as he is in the big leagues now, he's still young. And so he really like tries to, we've talked a lot. He's been in the same situation I've been in when he first came up. But you know what? It's collected and quiet confidence is what I'd probably say more of than being shy. You know, they always say like the smartest person in the room is the quietest person in the room because they're absorbing and being a sponge. And I probably should learn a little bit from that. I like to talk, but no, for sure, he's a great guy. So.
So I mean that major league debut that you had. I mean I don't think there's many people that could speak to that. I mean, how often do you think about that debut? Does that really stick with you as much as people say like you never forget your first time?
Yeah. You know what? It's crazy. Like I still don't feel like it's real. Or it's maybe a little bit of the fact, and you know, not to toot my own horn or anything, but like you expect to do that as a kid. You're like, oh, I'm gonna be a big leaguer, right? That's always been my plan, always been my goal. And so when you're in it, it doesn't feel. It feels like it's supposed to happen. Obviously, you like take a step back and you're like grateful for the opportunity, and you're grateful for the people that have got you there. And I wouldn't be here without a countless number of people, right? But when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, no, damn, like, yeah, it did happen. But now it's like, okay, now I want it to continue happening. What's next? And I think that's something, you know, a lot of athletes deal with is like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Because we are so routine oriented. We are trying to reach all these goals. And that's why you see guys like, you know, the greats, LeBron, Kershaw, like all these guys, they just keep doing it. They've done everything they can do in the game, but that's in their DNA is like what's next, and I think that's a little bit of it. You get a taste of it. You want to keep going.
So is this right? You had Tommy John in 2017?
Yes, 2016.
Okay, so
yeah.
so help me out here because I feel like everyone just takes Tommy John for granted. Like, you know, Walker Buehler's going to have his second Tommy John, and it's like, oh, he'll be back in a year. But really, like, how hard is it to come back from that?
I think the surgeons do such a great job now, and where baseball is in terms of like science and research. The rehab process is very hard on the person. Like it's hard mentally, it's hard physically, 100%. And I don't want to discount that, but the help that we do receive and I honestly like kudos to our staff. They are so good with rehabs. And they have been, at least since I've been here. Anything I've had, they've been able to like, you know, nip in the bud. But it is a very long, daunting process. And when you think about it that way, it could be like mentally rough. But when you're in it, there's like little victories you have. You know, your first month, it's about like getting range of motion back. So like every day you have on your calendar of what you're doing. So you take these little milestones. You know, maybe you get to 3 months and you can start doing some sort of lift or whatever it may be. I forget now; it feels like it forever ago. But you know, when you first get to pick up a baseball and start throwing it, like all these little victories are happening, and so you kind of get lost in that. And I think that's what most guys kind of get to in their rehab process.
So you're probably the only one, and I'm hoping you're going to tell us the truth. You got to celebrate a division championship. Now, they got the cameras in there, so we see all you guys partying. But I want to know, Andre, what do you guys do afterwards? Once the cameras are gone, and you guys, I know you got to take a shower to wipe off all the alcohol, but where do you guys go party? Do you guys go party at Mookie's? Like, the party doesn't stop at the stadium, right? You guys keep going, right?
Hey, so I that was the only celebration I've been a part of. I ain't gonna lie to you. That champagne hit, and I went straight home because I'm from Arizona. So it happened in here in Phoenix, and had some champagne in the clubhouse, couple of beers. Wife drove home, and I'm in bed in an hour after that. So I know you probably want to hear some crazy story, but it didn't happen.
So, I mean, do you take that? I mean, look, the Dodgers have been in the playoffs for 10 straight years, right? So I think as fans, we take those celebrations for granted. But this was your first time doing it. Was it everything you thought it was going to be? Or is it kind of just like one of those, what is happening right now?
A little bit of both. I think you feel a little bit of energy in the air of like, hey, we've been here before. And Doc Hart, like he says this a lot, like, hey, we can't take these for granted. Some people's 10th time and some people's first time. Kershaw said it too. And for me, I was like, whoa, this is really cool. I want to do this every year. And in the moment. And then you sense some guys are like, no, I've been here before, but what's really important is the next game and the next game and the next game. So it's like, okay, I get it now. Like, this is fun, but like, and some guys never get to experience that. So I'm very lucky to have done that. But it was also cool to be with guys like Michael Grove and Tony was there, and like Vargy. Those are the guys I came up with and have been, in the minor leagues with. So like those guys, getting to do it with those guys and getting that picture is pretty cool.
So you mentioned Miguel Vargas. We had him on the show, and we found out that he is not a fan of hot sauce. How can you handle hot sauce, or are you like Miguel who doesn't like it?
Yeah, no, a lot of the Latin guys from like the Caribbean, they don't love the hot sauce, and because growing up, my Latin America is Sonora, Mexico, so it's like that's hot sauce on everything. So no, yeah, I love the hot sauce.
So are you saying you're a Blaxican, Andre? Is that what you're telling us?
Yes, I'm Blaxican. If you want to call it that, I like to call myself an urban cowboy. All
right, we'll go with urban cowboy then.
Urban cowboy, yeah. No, that's funny. Yeah, Blaxican's cool.
Well, but you guys, I mean, you got to be a part of like stuff that at the major league level, like the celebration of the division. But then there's that annual trip where they make everybody dresses up when they go on I believe it's the last road trip of the season. And you and Joey Gallo and Bellinger and Turner, you guys went with the Chippendales costume. Babyface, do you have the picture for us? Because I got to ask you something on there it is. So as we can see from this picture, Bellinger and Justin Turner, and for those of you just listening to the audio portion, this is another reason why you should subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see this famous picture here. It could be like framed and hung in a museum somewhere. But we see Cody Bellinger and Justin Turner are wearing muscle shirts to cover them, but Andre is going, that's his real body. So did you like shame Bellinger and Turner for wearing shirts? Like, where did that confidence come from to be like, hey, I'm going shirtless? And how did you be included in the Four Horsemen here?
So it's actually funny. I got called up that day. I think we were in San Diego. Had like a 5:00 flight from Oklahoma City to Dallas to San Diego. Game was at 1. I got there at 12. Played catch barely on the field. Pitched that game. And ended up being really good. So I was just riding this adrenaline high, and then I get there, and everybody's like, "Hey, you got a costume?" I'm like, "No, I was on a flight this morning." JT's like, "Hey," and JT randomly walked by, and he's like, "Hey, I got a costume for you." So I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was like, "Sure, perfect." Next thing I know, I'm getting a bow tie and some cufflinks, and I'm like, "Oh boy, here we go." And they had. I don't think they made any black Chippendales bodysuits, but that would have been a trip.
So you didn't have a choice then. If they had a shirt, you would have worn the shirt then?
Yeah, for sure. But there was JT with the bodysuit, Belly with the bodysuit, and then I'm sitting here next to Joey. It's like, come on, guys, this is ridiculous. But the edit didn't look too bad, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Hey, urban cowboy right there, man. You looked good. So I mean, 3 of those guys are gone. And, Justin Turner, his impact in LA is huge. I mean, with him, the news that he's going to join the Red Sox, a lot of fans are taking it tough. As a pitcher, do you interact much with everyday players? I mean, do you have any interaction with Justin Turner or Cody Bellinger?
Yeah. Those guys are great. I got to know Cody, wouldn't say well this year, but got to know him a lot better than years previous because we're always flying by it. Pitchers and hitters are always on different schedules. JT being a vet, I've got to spend a little bit more time with him in the clubhouse and stuff, and he's a great guy. He's super approachable. He's always like kind of, every time he sees me, "What's up, Dre? Like, how you doing?" Whatever's going on. So JT, like, that's something that I think a lot of guys will miss, and the Dodgers fans especially, because he's just a great guy first. He's been there. He's been steady at third base for us for a long time. So that's obviously a big hit. And Belly, everybody knows what Belly is capable of. And yeah, he's had a few down seasons, but like there's no love lost there shouldn't be by any fans because he's done nothing but worked hard. He's battled injuries, done whatever he's had to do to be out on the field every day. He's played a great center field. So another guy that we're going to miss. And then Joey was awesome. Like, Joey's had a crazy baseball career coming up with Bryce and like all the different things you've heard about him, the celebrity or whatever. And he's just a down to earth dude. And yeah, he struggled and he's gone through some stuff. But like, again, like it is a hard game we play. It's really hard. Pitching is hard, but hitting a baseball is hard. You know what I mean? So it's like, kudos to those guys, because as easy as it is to like when you're having success, and they both have, it's really hard when you're struggling. And I've been there. So like, I totally get it. And for those guys to be, like pillars in the clubhouse, guys can go to them and, they're the same guy every day. That's really hard to do. So kudos to those guys.
I have a theory that Cody Bellinger is aware of this stoner image that he has, and he just plays it up. How far off base am I, Andre?
No, Cody's just Cody, man. He's just a chill guy. What you see is what you get. And that's what I love about him, man. Like all the things, all the theatrical stuff. You talk to Cody, it's exactly what you think, man. He's just a super down to earth dude. And he's a gamer, man. He really loves it. He loves the game.
So you were a part of something else, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. On Black Heritage Night, you caught the first pitch. You caught it from Darvin Ham, but then there were also some other celebrities on the field. I believe Issa Rae was there, will.i.am, and you caught next to Mookie and Trace, right? Like the Dodgers have been doing a lot of these heritage nights. And last year was the first year that they did like a Salvadoran and a Guatemalan Heritage Night, and people were so happy. I mean, I was there on Salvadoran Heritage Night, and it was a party, man. They were just sitting there playing all the cumbias and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How important are these Heritage Nights? Do you think they're genuine, or is it just something to placate fans?
Whether they're disingenuine or genuine, I'm glad they're doing it. You never know, but as a black player, like being part of the Players Alliance, that's something that we're really pushing for, is diversity in baseball and diversity in the stands. Like we want black people in the stands. We want people from Salvador in the stands. And that's the cool thing about LA is that the culture is crazy. And there's a lot of the Mexican heritage there, which is great. So like being a part of that was awesome, right? Yeah, like being next to Mookie, Trace, DP, Travis Smith, strength coach. Might be missing people, but there's not a lot of us black players in the game, and a lot of people on the TV they see black people, but they're Latin American most of the time. Mm-hmm. So to have the Heritage Night is great, but I think it also is a responsibility of the Dodgers and all MLB teams, to be honest, to try to get inclusion, get people in the stands from different cultures. So I love that part about it. Also, we're the Jackie Robinson, organization. So I think that's very important. Fernando Valenzuela, like all these different goats came from different cultures and different things like that. I love inclusion. I love bringing everybody in, and so I do think that's the responsibility that every team has for sure.
Wow, Andre, you must listen to the show because you just said another trigger word, and that's Valenzuela. I mean, Valenzuela is king on this podcast, man. So I got to ask you this just because the Dodgers signed Noah Syndergaard, and on their website, they had put 34 on there, and we were losing our shit over here going, there's no way he's wearing 34. There's no way. Now, everybody who's a loyal listener to the show knows we're on this campaign to get that number retired.
Right.
You said go, right? You mentioned Jackie Robinson and you mentioned Valenzuela in the same sentence. So outside of like Mexicans, Valenzuela still plays, right? Like you know about him.
Yeah, right. No, you know what? I would be lying to you if I said I was the best baseball historian. That I leave that to my dad. But I know what he's done for the culture, and to see like when Volver plays at Dodger Stadium, man, it goes crazy. And I love that. That's the culture I grew up in, man. So it's like I understand cultural icons, and I think they're just as important as baseball icons. And especially when we're talking about a team like the LA Dodgers, like that needs to be something that like it should be this big pool of people from everywhere. And, you see Mookie wearing it. We need black people in the stands. Like we need Mexican people in the stands. We need everybody there. And I think that's something that like sports is the perfect thing. You saw the World Cup, like how incredible that is, and people get passionate for that. And that's like something that we have here in the United States that we don't hold on to. And we're so grateful to be on the field playing the game. Not everybody could do it, but we're lucky to be doing it, right? So like we do have a responsibility to include everybody because it's something that spreads love, and that's what I love about it.
Were you surprised that when Mookie wore that shirt, and I think it was something along the lines that we need more black people in Major League Baseball, that it didn't get more attention?
No, I'm not surprised. Not surprised at all. You know what? And it's tough. It's a tough thing because as a player, you don't want to get involved in politics sometimes because it gets turned into a negative thing. But like also, you do have the freedom to say what needs to be said, and he's not wrong. Whether and this is my thing about all of that is I think players should be able to express what's on their mind as long as within parameters of you're trying to spread love, you're trying to spread awareness on good causes. And I think for the consumer, the fans, like take it and and for what it is. And if it doesn't apply to you, it doesn't apply to you. And if it does, it does. But it could change someone's life. And I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I appreciate. I know what you're saying, that it's a political issue, but for me, diversity will just make the sport better, and having more African Americans playing baseball will just make baseball better. So I hate that it's taken as political. I wish that they would make a bigger effort to try to get more African Americans to play the game. So we're gonna wrap up the show with what we call, it's a segment. It's called, because hanging out here, this is a carne asada, so we just we're just shooting the shit. So these is our kickback questions. It's kind of like a little bit of a speed round, Andre. So number one, are you a fan of the mariachi at Dodger Stadium, or is it overplayed?
I think we need more.
Okay. You know what? Everybody we ask, actually, it's the majority. The reporters are the ones that are sick of it. All the players say they love the mariachi. And in particular, they always sit there and go, oh, the big guy, the fat guy. We like the fat guy. By the way, his name is Julian. And, he's great. He's been on the show. Are you going to be changing your number this year?
I'm trying to.
Do you know what number you want?
I'm going to keep it on the DL for now.
Okay. All right.
I was surprised.
Have you given DJ Severe walk-up music?
Oh yeah. I love funk. Like I grew up on funk. LA's funky, man. So I went with a little bit of Roger Zapp last year, more bounce to the ounce. But
well played, my friend.
Yeah, more bounce to the ounce. Doo-Wop Diddy, what else I do? I do a little Anderson .Paak in there too. He's an LA guy. The easy ones are Outkast and Andre 3000, and then you got a Dr. Dre for me as well. But I try to mix it up. I'm like I said, urban cowboy. I like to be a little funky, so I'm a big music guy. So those get me going, get me feeling a little rhythm.
So you are an alum of Utah. Will you be going to the Rose Bowl, and are you supporting your Utes?
I will be on the cruise, so I will not be there. I was trying to get to the Pac-12 championship, but we had just had so much going on. But I love to see them whoop on USC. Sorry, LA fans, but I am a Ute.
Okay, two more. What is your favorite part of Los Angeles? Have you been able to experience LA?
Yeah, just love the beach, man. I love getting up to Zuma, up in the Malibu. It's usually a little chiller. The food, I'm a foodie, man. Gotta love the food. Every corner's got a cool mom and pop shop, and I love it.
Oh, wow. You just led me into our final question. We end the show with this. We ask everyone. Okay. We are about taco culture here on the Bleed Rose podcast. There we go. All right. Where do you go to get it?
I need a spot. So if you guys got some spots, I need some spots. I'm going to hit you up after this for some spots in LA. But hey, whatever is the best. I'm a carne asada. That's all you need.
Okay. I think for carne asada, there is a place in downtown LA called Sonora Town. But
Okay.
when you make the club, we will bring you tacos. We did it to John Hartug last year,
Okay.
where we
Okay.
brought him carnitas tacos. We'll bring you asada tacos. But yeah, it's good to know that the urban cowboy is one of us. Who knew? Who knew?
Hey, man, hey, Tucson, Arizona, man. It's a sleeper city, man. But it's got a great culture. It's got great food. It's awesome. I love going up there.
So you're always going to be an Arizonian, right? You won't adopt LA as your new home.
No, it's too fast. It's too fast for me. I love it, man. I really do love it. During the season, and it's a great place to play. Honestly, it's unlike anything else. In the off seasons, I like to slow down a little bit and get out here and just relax, man. Give my carne asada tacos.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Andre, it's been a real joy getting to know you and talk to you. We're rooting for you, man. We really hope. I know it's going to be tough, because it's spring training. The Dodgers always have a lot of invitees, so I know it's going to be tough to make the roster. But we're rooting for you, man, because I mean, when you come up here, you perform. So.
Thank you.
And just know that we're going to give you some of that Bleed Lows podcast karma now, especially now that we know you're the Urban Cowboy, a.k.a. The Blaxican. So do you want to give any shout-outs on your socials where the fans can follow you?
Yeah, man. Before that, though, I will say my first story. I grew up in Arizona, so I went to D-backs games. Chris Young and Justin Upton were my guys growing up. Orlando Hudson. And so I'm sitting down the right field line behind the first base dugout for the first time playing the Dodgers. And this must have been years ago. And you see the BLA come up, and then all of a sudden you hear the Dodgers fans saying East LA. So I'm like, okay, I get it now. I get it. So that was my first lesson about Dodgers fans. But anyway, so I love it. But yeah,
all right. Well, be careful how you answer this next one. West side or east side?
Hey, man. I love everybody. Spread love.
Well, spoken like a real politician. You're a pro now. You are a pro, Andre. So again, I think we missed it, but you want to give your shout outs on your Instagram or your Twitter?
Yeah. Andre Terrell 13, I think, is Instagram, and then Dre Day XIII on Twitter.
Okay, so there you have it. There you have it, folks. So next time when we're at the stadium next year and we hear more bounce, you know where that's coming from. So,
yeah. Hey, if they want to hear something, let me know. I'm down for whatever
Okay.
gets the people going. If you feel the energy up there, man, it's nothing like it. So,
all right, there we go. Just don't send Rhinestone Cowboy his way, okay? I mean, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. A big thank you to Andre Jackson. Thank you, Andre, for joining us.
hey, thanks, Juan. Appreciate y'all.
And again, once again, a big thank you to Andre Jackson, the Urban Cowboy. Who knew that? I did not know that he referred to himself as the Urban Cowboy. So that's good to know. Babyface, what did you think about what Andre had to say?
He knows what he's, looking forward to next year. I think we mentioned this a lot with a lot of these young guys that are coming up with the Dodgers. They have, a good head on their shoulders, right? They know exactly what they're trying to do. They know what's ahead of them. They know what the challenge is. And Andre he showed us that too. He knows, he's going to take what he did last year, move it into this year and fight for a spot. I mean, we saw a glimpse of him last season. And, it's something to look forward to going into this season now. The question will be like, where is he going to fit exactly? Will he be a rotation option, if someone's down, or will he be, a long relief or reliever? That remains to be seen. But I think he definitely deserves a spot there, from what he's shown in the past.
I know it's a very small sample size, but I didn't realize this. If you look at his ERA from 2021 and his ERA in 2022, in 2021, his ERA was 2.31. And last year, his ERA was 1.86. I know they used him as a long man last year, especially towards the end of the season when he himself said it. They were using him like every Sunday. You don't hear his name mentioned. It's the other sexy names, right? It's Bobby Miller, Miguel Vargas, Gavin Stone, Michael Bush. You don't hear Andre Jackson, but for me, I mean, we've seen that this guy performs. Now the issue is going to be, like you said, can he make the team and can he keep this up? Can he perform over a longer period of time? He mentioned to us that he had struggled at the beginning of last year in AAA. So what's that going to do to him full season in the major leagues? How is he ready for it? But I would like to see him until he fails. I think he deserves a shot to be on there, and I think the Dodgers are gonna need a long man, especially with all the question marks that they have in the starting rotation. And we know that the Dodgers' philosophy is to limit innings, so I think he has a really good chance to make the team out of spring training, which I hope is the case. One of the things, though, that really surprised me, coming out of that interview, is how he had mentioned that Julio doesn't get enough credit. This is now the second Dodger pitcher, because Clayton Kershaw had said this before, and I know we touched on this in a previous episode. But it's really interesting that I get it. Us as Dodger fans, of course, we root for Julio. We want Julio to win all the awards. But when you start hearing players and they say, hey, man, this guy doesn't get any credit, enough credit, it really makes me wonder, what's going to happen next year? I mean, once he becomes a free agent, will the Dodgers think of him the same way that his players, his fellow players, think of him?
Yeah, I mean, he said it. I mean, he said Julio's the ace. Julio is the ace. I mean, Julio, and that's tough too when you look at the Dodgers. Like, when you have a healthy Walker Buehler, right? You have Kershaw, who's still a legitimate ace, right? And then you have Julio, right? So those are three guys. Maybe Kershaw, he's not where he once was, but I mean, he's still Clayton Kershaw, right?
Right.
So between Walker Buehler and Julio, like, those guys would be easy number ones on practically every team, right? So it's like, where do the Dodgers see him? Do they see him as their legitimate number one ace? And I think we saw that a little bit more, this season. Obviously, Julio starting in the playoffs. They went with Julio, and does he get that opening? Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's going to get the opening day nod, right? Or would they? You think they'd go with Kershaw? This upcoming season, right?
Well, last year they didn't. Last year they went with Buehler. So now it's been broken. So you don't have to deal with being the guy who broke Kershaw's consecutive opening day streak, right? You don't have to deal with it. Yes, right now on paper it should be Julio, but that's a very good question. Will they give it to Julio?
Yeah. I mean, I think he definitely deserves it, right? And I think to show the Dodgers need to show, for me, like we've said this before. We feel like maybe they don't appreciate him as much, as they should, and that's my feeling. Maybe like you said, we're missing the entire point, right? But to me, I think to show that appreciation, he gets that opening day nod. He's your number one guy, and you show, hey, you're our number one guy going into the season. And here you're starting opening day.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, man, that it's funny because if you look at the rotation right now, it's what? Urias, Gonsolin, Kershaw, Dustin May, and Syndergaard. So of those five, Julio should definitely be the one that he's the best pitcher out of those five. So he should be your opening day starter. Last year, he pitched the opening game. I mean, there was still debate, right? Is Kershaw going to start game one? When clearly Urias was your best pitcher. So if the Dodgers pull that again, I mean, I don't know. It's just like, give it to this guy already. It's really interesting just to see how. Wasn't it? There was an award where the players actually voted for Sandy Alcantara, right, as best pitcher last year. Mm-hmm. So there was this growing belief, the players don't look at Julio the same way that the fans do. But maybe, again, it's one of those things. If you have to see this guy every day in order to truly appreciate him. And the other thing that just completely blows my mind is that Andre is older than Julio. We just forget how young this guy is.
Yeah. On Julio, though, we hadn't mentioned it, but he did win the Warren Spahn Award as the best left-handed pitcher in the game, and it's his second year in a row. So he is getting that recognition as being, the best left-handed pitcher in the game. And I think we gotta push him up a tier, though. He's one of the best pitchers in the game in general, right? Not just left-handed or right-handed. But yeah, I mean, Julio came up at what was it, 17, right?
Well, they signed him at 16, didn't they?
Yeah. So was it like no? He came up at like 19. Sorry.
Yeah.
So he was like 19. So yeah. I mean, he's gonna be one of those guys, that's gonna be like, man, that guy's been in the game forever just because they came up so long. It's so young. We're kind of mentioning this with Jason Hayward that they picked up.
Yeah.
He's 33, I believe, and he was up, I believe, when he was like 2021. So he was in the show really young. So kind of like Andrew Jones.
Yeah.
So like Jason Hayward is somebody as well that could help the Dodgers probably this year. If he's not old. People say, oh, he's washed. He's not old. I mean, he's 33 years old. That's still young. Like, yeah, does he still have it though? And can he be an everyday player and produce? I mean, we'll see. I mean, he got a minor league deal. He's gonna have to go and prove himself and win a spot. As a fourth outfielder or something like that. Maybe maybe he still has that in him as well. So, but when we see guys that come up really young though, it's like once they've been around, I'm like, man, this guy's been in the league for such. I mean, that's kind of like who. He's barely hitting free agency. He's going to be hitting at 27. 27. That's like it's ridiculous.
I mean, good for him. As I said, I hope he has a monster year, only because that will definitely help the Dodgers. Hopefully, win a World Series. But I mean, Julio is just. Look, what can we say about Julio that we haven't said already? Everybody knows how we feel about Julio. One of the other things I wanted to touch base was he brought up Valenzuela, and that surprised me, right? Because I always used to think, and maybe this is just naive on my part, or maybe more my ignorance, in that the only people that really appreciated Valenzuela were Latinos, in particular Mexican fans. That's who only really cared about Valenzuela. So to hear Andre mention when he's talking about the GOATs in Dodgers organization, and he goes from Jackie Robinson to Fernando Valenzuela, that really surprised me because, and just for clarification and for all our listeners, we know that Syndergaard is not going to wear 34. But initially, when it was announced that he was signing with the Dodgers, they had it. What was it, on their website, Babyface? Is that where they had him listed as 34?
It's on the rosters page, the Dodgers rosters page. It's still listed as 34. Like I said, I think I mentioned last time. Like it still kind of has me worried, but yeah, I mean, I don't really think they would give it to him. I mean, the only reason that I thought, hey, maybe when I saw it on there, it seemed kind of odd and kind of suspicious. Because remember when he went to the Angels last year, they gave him 34. And the Angels hadn't given out 34 since Adenhart had passed away, so over 10 years ago. So they weren't using that number as well. So obviously it seems Syndergaard has some attachment to that number, right? 34. If Rusty wouldn't have asked for it there, so maybe the same thing. He came to LA and like, hey, can I get 34? I mean, you guys aren't using it, right? Obviously, so like, why can't I get that number? So. Obviously we mentioned there'd be just a huge, nightmare if you gave him 30, if you gave him 34.
I mean, part of me is kind of curious to see what the reaction would be. I mean, are we just estimating this? That maybe there's going to be a huge number of Dodger fans who just don't care. But part of me is kind of curious, like if he came out there with 34, what the reaction would be. If fans would be like, what? Or if fans would just be, who cares? But that's why I was surprised by Andre Jackson, just the fact that, he knows who Valenzuela is. And I know we're going back to the same thing again. And it's like, how much longer is this organization going to wait until they give that guy his proper credit? And especially going just off of the fact that Justin Turner just left, for some people, what they're going through right now, seeing Justin Turner leave the Dodgers. Hey, I get your pain, because that's what I felt like when Valenzuela left the Dodgers. And I know that Valenzuela bounced around to a lot of teams after he left the Dodgers. But to me, I will always view that man as a Dodger. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm totally denying reality. He never wore another uniform other than a Dodger uniform. And it's the same way I'm going to look at Justin Turner. I mean, I'm going to see Justin Turner in a Red Sox And who knows how long he plays for the Red Sox, and maybe he has a very productive 2 years with the Red Sox. But for me, there's just certain guys that you look at them and you only look at them in one uniform. And it's very interesting that he had that impact on someone, and maybe it was because he was watching Diamondbacks games and watching the Dodgers. But how great was that he understands the East LA reference? How many times have you gone to been in an opposing team's ballpark where the Dodgers are the visiting team, and you hear that damn chant, "Beat LA"? How many times have you heard Dodger fans try to counter that chant with East LA?
Yeah, and I think now one of the instead of East LA, I think also we've seen BLA. Like these fans want to BLA, kind of have everything that LA has, all the championships and stuff like that. So yeah, but that chant's getting old, and I think they gotta retire that.
What, the Beat LA? Because I got news for you, it's never gonna go away. It's never going to go away. And I mean, it's not just with the Dodgers, but it's with other sports. The Lakers get it all the time. I'm curious to see if the Rams will eventually get the Beat LA chance, but Beat LA is here to stay, man. But I haven't heard that much of the BLA, but the East LA was always the classic one for me that just cracked me up, because I'm just like, I don't know how that's really countering the Beat LA chant, but whatever, man. East LA for sure. Anything else that struck you from that conversation with Andre?
I am curious to see what his number is going to be like. Sometimes we it's funny that we're really always curious about numbers, because, like I said, numbers mean a lot to guys, right? Like there's guys that they want to have that same number their entire career, whatever, and it could be a number that they grew up with, right, from their childhood days. As they've gone up, they kind of want to wear that same number. So it's going to be interesting to see what Andre picks, because he's wearing 94. 94 is what the guys get in spring training. Like, they just here take this number. But we have seen some guys, wearing those higher numbers, right? Like we saw Kenley with 74. Ryu, Manny had 99. Aaron Judge has 99.
Yeah.
So some of those numbers are kind of becoming more common, like the baseball numbers that you'd see, like 32, 20, 23. You're seeing the 99s, the 66. 66. I didn't see anybody wear that right until Puig, and then you started seeing it now with other teams, like players that were 66. So I wonder, did that have to do with Puig, right? I'm assuming that had to do with Puig, right? Or Mitch White, right? Or Mitch White.
Well, you think Mitch White is the greatest player to wear 66 ever?
So it could have came from that. They saw Mitch White and they wanted to wear 66.
Well, but I think the numbers thing speaks to what you have, actually what Andre was talking about, in that I think players are such creatures of habit. They're all about routines. And I think the number becomes part of your routine. And maybe it speaks again to the mental aspect of this game, where I'm not wearing my number and that's why I'm doing bad. Like when Andre couldn't understand why he was walking so many people at the beginning of last year, why he was struggling, that you're just grasping for any reason, anything that'll make sense to you as to why. I mean, we've seen people change numbers too, right? If they're struggling. Oh, another person with a high number. Do you remember who wore 97 for the Dodgers?
Ambassador of the podcast, Beatles podcast, Joe Beimel.
That's right. The ambassador, Joe Beimel, wore a 97. So, as I said, I'm rooting for him. I would like to see what he does. I think he's a hybrid pitcher. I think he's one of those guys that's going to see maybe some spot starts, but then you're also going to see him be a long person out of the bullpen. And look, it is now going into Christmas week. We're heading almost into January. The Dodgers still don't have a closer. So there is, it's going to be bullpen by committee in the closing role, unless someone early in the season can define themselves, which I find very, very interesting. That no one's really, it's not a bigger deal that it's like, hey, the Dodgers don't have a closer.
No, I mean, with Andre, I think he's going to kind of fit in, like you said, that hybrid role, kind of that Ross Stripling role that we'd seen before, what Tony Gonsolin kind of was prior to, this past season. I think he's probably that candidate for that, But as far as closer, yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it doesn't even seem like they're looking for a closer or trying to get a closer. I mean, but it was like that. It was that way, same way I think last off season until they made that trade for Kimbrough.
Yeah.
So right in spring training. So I mean, there was talk. I did hear of Liam Hendricks kind of might be on the market again with the White Sox.
Yeah, I heard that.
So would they go down that route and trying to get, maybe they go into spring training with no defined closer, and then they might go in a couple weeks and be, you know what, we should probably find a closer.
Yeah.
But there are guys on this team that can close, right? There's Bruce Starr. A lot of people think that that guy should be the closer. Evan
Phillips, yeah.
Right? Evan Phillips got some nasty stuff. Vesia can be pretty nasty. So those are the guys that we might see early on to close. And as mentioned before, I mean, I think they're going to take the beginning of the season all the way to the trade deadline, kind of just to assess where they're at, and then at the deadline, they're definitely going to meet those needs. Like, okay, do we need the closer? Do we need that other power hitter off the bat? Do we need a different shortstop? That's gonna like a Trey Turner, Corey Seager, Manny Mitchell, all those guys that they've had in the past. I think this is going to be one of those seasons that it's just gonna, okay, let's wait and see where we're at end of July.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Bleed Lows podcast. Once again, look, if you guys haven't subscribed yet to the podcast, what are you waiting for? Go ahead, subscribe, spread the word, tell everyone, let everyone know about the Bleed Lows podcast. Tell them you never know what's going to happen in the carne asada. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel, because then you get to see these awesome little pictures like the one that we put up here with Andre as his Chippendales outfit, for those of you who haven't seen that picture. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. For this episode of the Bleed Lows podcast, yo he sido su servidor, Juan Ramírez, y de parte de mi colega Babyface. Nos vemos para la próxima. This episode of the Bleed Lows podcast is brought to you by Bet Online, where the game starts.